What's up, guys? Tambo here with your weekly core report. This last week was our biggest ever for our members, including 2 more millionaires. Let's get to the winners. NFL was our biggest cash cow last week, highlighted by some great calls across all of our content, including JT Hayes being all over the 49ers game script on Sunday. Subscribe to our YouTube page now so you don't miss calls like this.
A little bit like the San Francisco defense, 3,200. I think Todd Bowles is a terrible head coach. And I think they'll come in with a terrible game plan in this game. And I think they could get wiped. I think it means a lot of touches for Christian McCaffrey. So if you simply pivot from Henry to McCaffrey, that's a huge ownership discount.
In addition, our cores and player pools were littered with the highest scoring players on the slate. Our members were in sync with our content, and the leaderboards proved it. Peter Pan 14 kicked things off, hitting for 117K in NFL Showdown. J-Dub 115 hit for 7K. Sammy Davis Jr. hit for 10K. OG member Brittany turned $75 into 11K. J. Reed won 30K. CSP 246 shipped 40K. Craven or Vag used Mangones and my weekly construction advice to hit for 40K. And K. Fallick hit for 46K with a Russell Wilson lineup. We'll get to our biggest NFL winners in just a second, but first we need to shout out some big wins in our other sports. Our content continued to crush in the soccer streets, with NYG fan hitting for 10K. K. Fallick's hot streak continued in the World Cup, shipping for 27K. In NBA, Long Dick Dong hit for 7K, while in MMA, Sevens Vox shipped a monster 51K. At Rumpier Sports, we take pride in featuring content contributors who actually make a living playing DFS. We put our money behind our picks on every slate, unlike many of our competitors. There's nothing better than when our members benefit from our content, and this week was the best week yet, producing 2 DraftKings Millie Maker winners to follow up last week's Millie Maker success. Shout out to Deepwater, who shipped $1 million in the 44-44. And huge shout out as well to Gordon Jonathan. He shipped the $20 Millionaire Maker with a monster score of 272 DK points, blowing away the competition. Congrats again to all our members. If you want to be featured in the core report, drop your winning lineup in the Members Never Win channel in our premium Discord. If you're not a member, join now. You won't find a better value with all sports included for one low price. And while you're watching, hit that like button now. Remember, if you're not winning with us, you're watching us win. Until next time, let's keep running pure.
It's the Week 15 Monday Night Football Print Factory edition with the recently regular Monday crew. You know what to do when you come in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us a friendly chat in the chat there, leave a comment. Tell us if your mistletoe is set up right over the computer there that you're watching. We've got an interesting game on tap tonight. Maybe, in the same vein of how these primetime games have been, it's 2 teams that are pretty much unwatchable unless there's a $500,000 top prize and lots of other heavy prize pools. So come on in, join us, get ready on this Monday afternoon. And if you're watching this for free, because this is fantastic entertainment, but you haven't dipped your toe into the waters, this is the time of year. Go ahead. You can splurge a little. Give yourself a holiday gift. Go ahead. Ho, ho, ho. 25 is the promo code. That gets you 25% off of your first month's payment. Ho, 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 25. Go ahead and do that. A little something for yourself this holiday season. Speaking of a little something for yourself this holiday season, my guy C-Dome, Chris Randone, congratulations. Hoop, close your ears. Argentina takes it down, takes down France. Lionel Messi, finally a world champion. Congrats to you and all of our other Argentinian members and supporters. How are you doing on this Monday?
Hoop left the show. I don't know if he's coming back, but yesterday was electric, man. Went to a bar downtown. It was packed at 6:45 in the morning. I was shocked. So It was an up and down game, but I will say, one of the best games I ever watched in my entire life. It was amazing. So hats off to my country. And yeah, I honestly, I had a bottle of wine behind me. I was thinking about breaking open for the show today, but it's Monday, man. It was too premature. I just can't get lit on a Monday morning.
Yeah, it is morning where you're coming from, and that was an early day. By the time I got out to watch the football games, there was no soccer on any of the TVs. Hoop, I saw that you took a little bit of a segue there. You hopped out. You were like, "Hey, I can't listen to soccer talk at the beginning of Monday Night Football." But listen, we had a good show Friday night. Going to have a good show today. How was your weekend? How was your NFL Sunday?
Yeah, weekend went well. I mean, Crane in DC pounded me with the soccer talk yesterday morning. I just couldn't do it back-to-back days. So I figured I'd just take a little break and step away. No, but congratulations to CDOM. That's an awesome win. And yeah, I did see a little bit of it. Like I said, my kids kind of got into it, unfortunately. So they wanted to watch some of the games. Yeah. So the kids were in on it. My daughter's teacher, I think she coaches soccer. So she's, I think, been putting it on the TV every day. So she was into it and, caught a little bit of it. So it was pretty cool. And then you see the pictures and videos from Argentina. That was pretty sweet. The people in the streets and everything celebrating. In terms of NFL, yesterday, not the greatest day. Justin Herbert, man. Oh, that was painful. Really, really not all in, but I think I had 40 to 50% in my 150 of him, and it looked really good from the beginning. I mean, 4 for 4 in the first drive, 60 yards. I mean, just slinging it, doing whatever they want to do. And then they get to the 3-yard line and just decide that they're just going to pound it in the end zone. That was frustrating. I had a lot of Herbert as well, or not Herbert, it Hurts. That turned out pretty well, but just obviously not enough. I mean, it was interesting games for sure. I mean, I posted a few things on Twitter, a few takeaways. I just want the Eagles. I just don't understand. This has to be the easiest schedule of all time. It has to be. They don't play anyone this week. The first game, the real game, I guess, against Dallas. We'll see what happens, but man, they're so fraudulent to me. Tonight's game, not the most interesting from an entertainment, just sitting back watching. It's one of those games you're going to have some money on the line to really tune in and watch it. And, for us and the people listening to the show, I'm assuming they will have some cheese on the line, so they'll be tuning in. And that's why they're here to get the winners. And I'm confident that we're going to find them here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday I was high on Elijah Moore, just the stats about the slot receivers against Detroit. And the Opto kept putting Russell Gage in my lineups. And I was like, no, I don't want to play Russell Gage.
Dude,
and
that's so funny you said that, because I was building my team. And if you use optimizers and they make adjustments and slide guys in with a solid projection, it'll just hit a ton of your lineup. So I had the same thing where Gage was just pounding my lineups. I'm I'm not playing this much Russell Gage. So I took it way, way down. Oh, that was a mistake, obviously.
Yeah, he hit. So I was like, it gave me so much. I was somewhat interested, as I said yesterday morning, in the price for Tampa Bay. I just felt they were all too cheap. So I was like, you know what? I'll make 3 or 4 Tom Brady stacks and I'll let it pair him with Russell Gage. Those lineups cashed a lot more than my Elijah Moore lineup. So that worked out all right. But as far as the soccer goes, look, the kids are into it. Don't cry for me, Argentina. You don't have to worry about it because there's no crying in Argentina today. But I was asking my sister, I said, hey, what does my godson want for Christmas? She said he wants a picnic jersey. I said, who is Picnic? And she's like, you watch every sport imaginable. You talk about it every single hour of every day. How do you not know who this guy is? He's a USA soccer player. So my apologies to Mr. Picnic and his family and anyone else. But that's the one sport that I just hoop like you. It's I only have so much. Much. If Team USA was on the run, C-Dome, that Argentina was, I probably would have gotten a lot more into it.
I got to tell you, I know you guys don't, really fancy soccer, but I will say it was probably one of the most entertaining games I've ever seen in my entire life. It was that good. And then on the flip side, I had almost 100% Miles Sanders, and that was even more devastating than I can ever see.
I would have much rather watch soccer than football if I was all in on Sanders.
No. I have to ask before we get into this slate, because I'm still baffled, but it was the middle of the second quarter. He still hadn't even had a carry yet.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I'll tell you, and since I've been playing this, and it's hard to do all the time, but sometimes you have to throw it out the window. Usually a guy has the type of game that Miles Sanders did last week, where he gets into the box. It's an unusual day in terms of volume for him because of what Jalen Hurts can do. And I normally fade him. And yesterday I was on the show. Snyder liked him. AP was talking about him. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, against the Chicago defense, it's probably going to be run heavy. And sure enough, it's Jalen Hurts that gets the 2 rushing touchdowns and not Sanders. Kind of curious about the usage there, but that's been the Eagles' way for so many seasons, is you just never know when they're going to actually give the ball to the running back. And this year it's a little bit safer in terms of Sanders as the guy. In years past, especially with Doug Peterson, they'd have like 2 or 3 guys. You'd be like, I don't know which one of these guys is going to get the bulk of the volume. And that's the other thing about yesterday. So many of these teams splitting carries. Yeah. It's real. Like yesterday, it was like, all right, this should be an Isaiah Pacheco spot. No, Jerick McKinnon with another 34, 35-point day.
Yeah.
Very, very frustrating day. Very frustrating day.
But not even the pass catching. McKinnon was getting carries.
Yeah. He's just,
I know Pacheco fumbled and stuff, but like at the end of the day, it's like, my God, like if these split backfields, I'm just so confused. And then Latavius Murray, I mean, this guy just came out of the grave and now he's going off. But then, you know, it was even crazy. Marlon Mack was going off right behind him.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had a best ball lineup, and all of a sudden I am in first now because of Marlon Mack out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Out of thin air.
And Marlon Mack, shout out to our guy, Matty Ice, somehow looked through the running back options and decided he was worth a shot. So he actually had him in his core. So a couple of people played him, and he paid off his salary. I mean, paid it off more so than Miles Sanders.
Yeah, Crane did mention him. Crane did mention him on the Morning Wood, and I mean, it was one of the Crane, what the fuck are you talking about type plays where I just brushed it off, and you know, you're crazy. I'm not even thinking about this, but yeah, and he went off too. I mean, I like Jordan Newens in the chat. You know, same thing with like Herbert, Allen, Mike Williams, Eckler. They all suck. Move on tonight and pretend like it didn't happen. I like that strategy. Besides the fact that a few less giblets in the old accounts.
Right. It could have been, for me, it could have been a lot worse. But I X'd out Kamara and put 60% James Conner. So at least I got something back. That kind of worked out. But we'll get on to tonight. And Stephen Bourgeois, I hope that's the way you say your name, Bourgeois. Stephen Bourgeois. You maybe are from Francais, and we'll talk about the Eiffel Tower later. You shipped the Saturday play action. Congratulations to you. Thank you for signing up. And if you're like Steven and you're watching because you like some of the information, you're not sure, now's the time to join. Ho, 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 25% off of your first month's payment at runpuresports.com. New Orleans for Stephen Bourgeois. Love to see it. We are going to get into this game, this Monday night game. It is the Los Angeles Rams at the Green Bay Packers. Baker Mayfield is back in our lives once again. He's back on the road where opposing defenses have at times had a field day with them. The Packers 7.5-point favorites, 39.5 total in Green Bay, where it's going to be 19 degrees and between clear and overcast throughout the game this evening. Injury news for the Los Angeles Rams. Lots of names not playing in this game. Many on the defensive side. Aaron Donald is out. Marquise Copeland is out. Linebacker Trayvon Howard is out. Defensive back David Long is out. And as a result of Mayfield having that game, as well as a injury, quarterback John Wolford is out for Green Bay, mostly fully healthy. Aaron Jones was limited in practice. He's been limited the last couple of weeks. Don't know if this is an injury situation where they're just saving him, but they really need to win games. So David Bakhtiari, offensive tackle, is the only notable injury for Green Bay. Hoop, I'll kick it over to you. Thoughts overall on this game? We've got the Dome team, the Southern California team, going to the frozen tundra. It normally doesn't work out all that well for these teams. What do you see here overall in terms of thoughts on the game environment?
Yeah, I mean, so the Rams are obviously have to be like the most disappointing team, you know, this year. They've suffered a lot of injuries, but they are bad from the beginning. I mean, they didn't look good from the beginning, so you can't really blame the injuries. You have the Packers, who, I don't know, like they're on their last life here. If they don't get a win tonight, their season's likely over as well. playing in Lambeau on Monday night, I do think the Packers kind of just give a full effort here and try to pick up the W, and they're going against a dead team. So I want to be right out of the gate Packers heavy for my showdown lineups. Now, for me, the most challenging part of this slate for DFS purposes is finding captains. Like, who has the upside to go ahead and win this slate for us? I was looking at Aaron Rodgers. Man, like, the numbers are just like not there. The best fantasy game for him this season is 20 fantasy points. 20.36 against Dallas is his highest number. And it kind of reminds me of like the Derek Carr situation. We've seen Watson go off like for 3 weeks in a row. You'd assume the quarterback would be having good games along the way with him, but it's just not the case. Still, though, man, it's gonna be tough to find the high upside captain. So I might have to consider Rodgers. I want to be in on Aaron Jones. I mean, he's got the upside, I think, to go out there and kind of, not necessarily break this slate, but be the guy that you need in captain. He's got the mid-20s upside. He's got the pass catching upside that we like. He's got the goal line touchdown upside that we like. So Aaron Jones, probably my favorite guy. He'll probably end up being the highest owned. He is the most expensive on the slate at 11-2. But I guess long story short, for me, I'm struggling to find captains. We'll talk through it here throughout the show, but I know for sure I want to be Packers heavy because I think they're facing a dead team and they have a little more incentive here to get the job done.
Yeah, and all the excitement from the Baker Mayfield game last week indoors, that euphoria's got to wear off, and just a tougher matchup here. Randall, looking at the more popular captains, it looks like it's going to be Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Christian Watson. I'm on hoop side here. It's tough to see Aaron Rodgers as a captain here. The last 2 weeks, if the last 2 games, I should say, that the Packers played, you're looking at A.J. Dillon and Christian Watson as the guys who are putting up a bulk of the production. What are your thoughts overall on this game environment?
Yeah, I think I kind of have to agree with Hoop here. Packers heavy seems to be kind of the move. They just have so much more of a ceiling offensively with these playmakers as compared to the other side of the ball. And, I think at the end of the day, looking at Aaron Jones, he's in a great spot to really, be the optimal captain. I think AJ Dillon's interesting as well, especially if he can, have those 18, 20 carries. He closes out games as well. So for me, he has the price point to give yourself an opportunity to have that ceiling type game. He's done very well last 2 games. And so I'm just curious that if that's the narrative again, to keep running with the ball. But when I look at the Packers, I think, I look at Jones, I look at Dillon, Watson and Lazard will probably be like that player pool that seems to be the most fitting for captain. And I don't mind Packers D as well tonight. Mayfield, I know people, are going to look at him from last week like the savior, but this is a very difficult game environment. It's hard to go into the frozen tundra and really try to do what you can. And this passing defense is pretty strong for Green Bay. And they have some great lockdown corners. So I'm just curious, like, how much can Van Jefferson do tonight or Skowronek, like, can they replicate what they did last game? I'm not sure. So, if I'm looking at anyone from the Rams side, I hate to say this, but I think I would consider Cam Akers for the captain spot. And that's solely based on the fact that if I'm going to attack the Packers defense, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rush the ball, right? Can he get 15, 20 carries tonight? I'm not sure. He's got 12 and 17 his last 2 games, but this is the weak spot for the Packers. So that's kind of where I would go, if I'm looking at the Rams side. But yeah, it's this game, looking at it, just the offensive talent alone, Green Bay is so much more superior compared to the Rams side of the ball.
Let me stick with you as we talk about the quarterback position, because Aaron Rodgers, 10.8 on DraftKings. Baker Mayfield, $10,000 on DraftKings. His best fantasy output was 19 points all the way back in week 1. And even last week in a good game script, in a good game for him, I think it was 14.2 fantasy points. Is that enough for 10K when you've got all these weapons on the Green Bay side? What are you thinking about here at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, and what, half of those points came on that final drive,
That's
right?
right.
That 90-something yard drive to close out the game. So in hindsight, that his game was like very subpar, regardless of what the end of the box score would suggest. So yeah, it's a very high price point. When I look at the Packers D, it's hard for me to say that he can have like this crazy type ceiling game, because what is his ceiling? 19 points first week of the game or first week of the season against the Browns team where they were trailing, they had to throw more. So, that production obviously came late as well. He's just not as efficient as his price would suggest. So when you look at like what's tonight, okay, he's projected, 45, 46% around the industry right now. And, when you look at it from like a, leverage perspective and his price point and looking at, okay, like, does this make sense for me to roster him? To be honest with you, you're better off fading, in a situation where you can really get an edge. And if you think that he can turn it over and be that Baker that we do know, Packers defense, becomes very much more appealing in that aspect. So, and this is something where maybe 25, 28% ownership looking like aggregate wise right now for the Packers D. Maybe I don't mind going a little bit more heavy on them and opening up that roster construction, because I think I do want to run dual running backs tonight in some lineups. So looking at Mayfield, I think maybe, and this is just like from like an early on perspective, but if the ownership stays the way that it is, maybe I just kind of like limit my exposure to him to the point where if he, does have that potential ceiling game, I have some shares. But I think I'm more confident with me not rostering him compared to actually having him in the lineup, just because I just don't think, one, he has the offensive talent. Two, the atmosphere is very difficult for him. The passing D is, very strong compared to the rushing D. And I think like all these factors make me want to have less and less of Mayfield in this situation.
Fair enough. Hoop, same question, quarterbacks, 10K Baker Mayfield. And then in terms of defense, they did do, at least on DraftKings, an interesting job there, pricing up the Packers D at 5K, which makes it tough to get there, because now if Baker's his usual self, okay, 8-10 points from a defense, it could be enough. Thoughts on the quarterbacks here?
Yeah, so I mean, you're just going to have to play, Aaron Rodgers, obviously. I don't know for sure, what I'm going to do with him in the captain spot, but in the flex, I mean, even if he goes out and gets like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 fantasy points tonight, you probably need him. You have to imagine there's going to be a lot of low fantasy scores. So that means we're looking for floors, I think, on the slate. We're not looking for upside. There's not going to be a ton of upside guys to attack. So we're looking for floors. Aaron Rodgers obviously has a floor. I mean, a realistic floor is probably 13, 14, 15 fantasy points. And that's a low number. Don't get me wrong. But on this single game showdown slate, that might be enough to get the job done. And as much as I want to just say I'm not playing Baker Mayfield because I do think he sucks, I don't think he puts up a lot of fantasy points. He could get 12 tonight, and he might be the Ram that you need on your lineups. And again, that's a low number. Don't get me wrong. That 12 is a very low number, but the way these showdown slates and roster construction set up, you need one Ram, and him getting 12 or 13, he could be the Ram that you need on your lineup. So I think I will be including him in my player pool. I will not be manually adjusting my ownership on him. It's going to be, I'm going to put in a fair number, probably somewhere between 12 and 14 fantasy points, and let it run. That'll mean I'm definitely not playing him in captain, but if he hits in the flex, I'll have him in there. If it's 20%, I'm fine with it. If it's 30, I'm fine with it. 40, I'm fine with it. But I'm not going to manually adjust it and make sure I get X amount of Baker. Naturally going to get a lot of Aaron Rodgers because all the projections are so low. I mean, no matter where you go around the industry, him and Aaron Jones are going to be 1-2, but it's not like we're looking at 20 fantasy point productions. We're in the upper teens on these guys everywhere you look. So it's a floor slate, which brings these guys into the conversation for sure. And again, I don't like Baker. I think he sucks. I think he's a shitty quarterback, blah, blah, blah. But again, if he goes on and gets 12 or 13, that might be enough for our lineups tonight.
Josh Gillum is in chat. Josh, I hope you hit the like button. If you are just joining, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Head on over to runpuresports.com if you're not a member. Use code HOHOHO25 for 25% off your first month's payment. And Josh says Baker threw it 35 times, fresh off the streets. Rams off a bye. I think they, here's the thing: 35 times indoors against the Raiders, much different than being outdoors on the road against a team that is just superior, in my opinion. So, Hoop, I'll stay with you talking about the running backs here. This Rams defense, the key to beating the Rams has really been through the air, but with all these defensive injuries, it certainly makes it seem like it's a better matchup here. Aaron Jones, limited in practice due to an ankle injury, but he's ready to go. And you've got A.J. Dillon as well. On the Rams side, you've got Cam Akers, Kyron Williams, Malcolm Brown will get a couple of snaps. He's cheap at 800. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what you do on the Rams side of the ball here. Obvious interest in Jones and Dillon. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so, we already talked about Aaron Jones quite a bit. I mean, he's definitely the highest upside guy on the slate. Like, if there's anyone I said, all right, this guy has the best chance of getting 30 fantasy points, it's him. Just because of the way, his game is, where he's going to get receptions, he's going to get goal line work. If it's a competitive game, he gets the work. If it's a blowout, he probably still gets some work. So he's the safest game script guy on the slate by far. He's the most dynamic fantasy player in this game by far. So definitely want a lot of him in the captain. I think A.J. Dillon's a really strong play too. I mean, anytime the Packers, this hasn't been the case a ton this season, they haven't been favored by a lot this season. I mean, it's been disappointing for them overall, but now they're 7-8 point favorites at home. Those are the games where you want to play A.J. Dillon. 2 touchdowns, definitely in the realm of possibilities here. And he's priced fair. I mean, 6.2K, very fair. If he goes out and gets 20 tonight, which I think is very realistic, you probably need him in captain. So I'm going to include him in my captain pool as well. The Rams guys, Cam Akers, yeah, I get it. I mean, I just don't love that price tag, man. 8.2K, like that's a steep price tag for Cam Akers. Won't be playing any of him in captain. I will include him in my flex. I mean, he's been fine lately. I mean, 17? He's still. It's not like he's getting 20 touches. 17, 13 in the last 2 games. So fine with him in the flex if he hits. But that's probably it. I'm just going to play those 3. I know Malcolm Brown's kind of projecting a little bit. He's $800. I don't think I want to mess with these cheap plays on the slate. I mean, when I want to mess with the cheap plays is when I see that there's some really high upside options on the slate that I want to jam into captain. I'm not seeing that tonight, so I am going to try to avoid the cheap plays as much as possible, which will keep me off guys like Malcolm Brown. Kyron Williams, another guy is kind of, projecting, but 5.8K, man, I cannot pay 5.8K. So it's going to be Jones and Dillon, flex captain for sure. Akers in the flex if he hits. It's going to be a similar approach to me with Baker, with Cam Akers here. If he hits my lineups, awesome. If he doesn't, I'm not forcing him in.
400 watching, just about 120 likes. As you guys know, last 2 weeks have been big for our members. Alicia Hunt takes down the Millie, slams some tequila and some beers and some Benihana after that. That was good. And then followed it up last weekend with members Deep Water and Gordon Jonathan winning the $1 million contests, both of them on Sunday. RunPureSports.com. Go ahead, hit the like button. And if you're thinking about becoming a member, again, we have code HOHOHO25, 25% off your first month's payment. And that gives you everything. Gives you our premium content, cores, our player groups, Big T's a player pool, as well as AP's heat map, JSU's player pool, and our guy Spread from the bet side. He's got a weekly show talking touchdowns and a daily NBA rundown at RunPureSports.com. Randone, these running backs, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, obviously very good plays. Are you concerned at all with the ankle injury with Jones? Are you not concerned about that? Do you think maybe that them limiting him was a product of positive game scripts? And what are you doing with the Rams backfield?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what happens is when you have someone good in the backup role like A.J. Dillon, and it's also the season's really not much of meant anything left for them. let's just say he does tweak his ankle tonight, God forbid, and all of a sudden they just say, you know what, he's just limited the rest of the game. There is a scenario where that can happen. I think too, like if we've looked at the last few slates, a lot of us have gotten screwed over by heavily investing in high owned guys, right? Ramondre Stevenson, remember last week, same thing with his ankle tweak to try to come back in. They just removed him because Pierre Strong and the other guy was going off Harris. So
that was a disaster of a game.
disaster, right? I got PTSD from these freaking showdowns. It's unbelievable. And so tonight, like I think just because of what I've seen the last few slates, I will pull back as far as my exposure, especially in this type of scenario. He already has like a tweaked kind of situation with his ankle, and whatever, his practice reps were capped. It is what it is. But if let's just say there is a scenario where like these things can happen to the running back position, I think that allows me to kind of maybe invest a little bit more in AJ Dillon. However, they're both getting ownership. So I'm going to have both. I'm going to run teams that have both of them on there. I'll run one with, I'll run some with, just AJ on some and Aaron on the other. And it is what it is. Like, that's just the fate of showdown and what you have to go through. The other side of the ball is like really where it gets interesting, because you have to look at kind of where this Packers team struggles, and it's really defending the run. I mean, teams have run all over this team this year. They've given up the second most yards in the league, given up a lot of touchdowns to the running back position. And so what does that do tonight for this like game script, right? Like, do you really go in thinking like you're going to throw all over Jair Alexander in this passing defense? This passing defense also blitzes the second highest in the league. So what does that look for the urgency with Mayfield, especially if he doesn't have that type of synergy yet with the wide receivers, given he's only been there for a short period of time, which means less time in the pocket, which means more pressure, which means more opportunity for defensive, situations where, he turns over the ball. So to stay in the game, do you feed the ball and run it and, put it in a situation where this is the best way that we can win is by running, and where they've been weak all season? That kind of gives me a bump to Cam Akers, projected to be 30% owned right now. And I think the only thing that we have to ask ourselves is, like, can he really get 20 carries? He hasn't got it all season. He's gotten over 15 once, and that was, against Seattle, but he did have, 2 touchdowns that game. Wasn't really efficient, 3.5 yards a carry. But like, in order to beat this team or even like stay within, a touchdown, they gotta run. So I gotta have a bump here to Cam Akers. I have to focus on where they're weak. And so like for me, when we're talking running back position, he definitely is someone that I think should be looked at and considered maybe more than kind of what the public is suggesting. And I think, Hoop's right about the price point for Kieran Williams. But I will say, I think the only reason why I would even suggest paying this price point is because no one else wants to. And let's just say Cam Akers gets hurt or he's not as efficient, but Kieran Williams comes in and does something special, which, definitely not probable as far as like a high probability perspective, but it can happen. This is showdown. Give me some shares of him. I have to have at least some shares of him just in case of that scenario, given how weak their rushing defense is. So from the grand scheme of things, that's kind of how I see it from the running back spot.
Hoop. Moving on to wide receiver here. Christian Watson has been amazing. Alan Lazard hasn't really done a whole lot recently. You've got Romeo Doubs in there. You've got Randall Cobb in there. Sammy Watkins was released, so he won't be around to troll lineups this evening. And then on the Rams side, Van Jefferson and Skowronek with a big game last time out. And then guys like Tutu Atwell, Brandon Powell at 2,200 potentially getting involved. Probably not a lot of interest in Austin Trammell. Favorite receivers on the Rams and the Packers?
Yes, I think this is definitely an interesting spot. I mean, last showdown slate with the Rams, I believe 2 of their guys made it on the optimal, and it was Tutu Atwell and Skowronek, which you talked about. To me, I'm going to focus more on these guys than, Cam Akers and Kieran Williams. I want exposure to all of them. Atwell is going to probably be the highest owned just because the price tag is the cheapest at 4.4K. If you're playing on FanDuel, Atwell's only $6K, which is $1,000 above the min price. So he is an extraordinarily good value over there on FanDuel. Still a really good value over on DK as well at 4.4K. So I think he'll be highly owned. But I want Van Jefferson. I want Skowronek. I'm good with all 3 of those guys. That appears to be their trio. Brandon Powell, Austin Trammell probably won't really get to those guys. Again, I'm trying to, avoid some of these guys where you're banking on them getting like 5 or 6 fantasy points. I just want out on those guys on the slate because I just don't think we have enough high upside guys to take the chance on some of these shitty dudes. So I really like Atwell, Jefferson, Skronik. In terms of like the ownership, I think Skronik's probably my favorite at 5.2 because I think he'll come in lower owned than Atwell. But again, I'm going to get exposure to all those Rams guys. On the Packers side, I think they can have some success here. Christian Watson's going to be the guy that everyone goes to. My not flag plan. One of my bigger takes on the slate is going to be getting a lot of Allen Lazard. I think we could see a little bit of a flip here. Watson's a guy that's been getting all the attention from Aaron Rodgers over the course of the last few weeks. I think that could potentially flip to Lazard a little bit. So I am interested in Lazard in that captain spot. Probably have to be interested though in Watson as well because of the upside. Like he has the big time upside, but I want an equal amount of Lazard, if possible, when I go to build my team. So 2 guys that you definitely have to consider. I mean, 2 guys that Aaron Rodgers is building that relationship with a little bit, and Watson does have the massive upside, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it goes to Lazard tonight. So he's going to kind of be a guy that I have in a lot of my lineups. After that, though, not a ton. Like Randall Cobb, I don't love the price tag. I don't really like this sort of game for Randall Cobb where they could potentially be playing with a lead. So he's a guy I'll probably be a little lower on, same as like Romeo Dobbs at 6.8K. This is a bad price tag for him at 6.8. Like I just have to play like Lazard and Watson over him. So I probably will fade Dobbs, however you pronounce his name, at 6.8 just because of the price tag. But I mean, DraftKings is set up for wide receivers. I mean, the scoring system definitely benefits wide receivers. So I want to get exposure to all the main wide receivers on the slate. And I'm probably going to end up fading all those fringe guys and take my chances there. But Lazard's the guy that I think I'm going to kind of, make sure is a priority play for me tonight.
It's interesting on Lazard versus Watson because Lazard has been getting roughly the same amount of targets or more. He's just done less with them. He hasn't gotten into the end zone. It's been Watson that's getting all the flashy plays, the long touchdown passes. So that could flip just based on opportunity. They're getting the same amount of opportunity. Why can't it be Allen Lazard, C-Dome, that comes through and has the big game here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Hoop. Like the pass catchers are really all in play when it comes for the Packers. I think you can switch it up. I think you can also have more than one. I don't mind that whatsoever. The Rams have been particularly very weak when it comes to defending the pass, and which is kind of crazy because I mean you have Jalen Ramsey, but and you have these other guys on defense that from last year from this Super Bowl winning team that they really built on their defense, but however there's missing pieces, right? They're missing pieces with pressure, they're missing pieces with getting to the quarterback. And what does that do? Well, that allows a lot of time and a lot of open space for these quarterbacks, for receivers to find an open spot, especially when you're playing zone coverage. So I don't mind it whatsoever when it comes to Watson and Lazard and Dobbs. But I think the conversation that is kind of more interesting, because we know those guys are going to get volume. We know what Rodgers is going to do as far as the passing game. I think an interesting thing is like looking at kind of this Packers defense, right? Top 10 in yards after catch and top 10 and giving up the least amount of air yards. And like I said before, they blitz the second highest in the league. So what does that tell us? That tells us that, there's not a lot of deep balls being thrown, first off. And secondly, it means like these short dump downs are more likely to happen than long ones. So I think the discrepancy between like the talk of Van Jefferson against Skronik or Tutu Atwell against Skronik, I think Skronik gets the bump here because of the situation of running out of the slot. The slot is where they are the weakest. If Darnell Savage especially comes up and is guarding that slot position, he has a 130 plus quarterback rating this year. He's given up a lot of yards. And what this tells me is that if we're going to do these short little passes, Skronik would benefit the most. So from a pass catching perspective, if you're sending Jefferson long or you're sending Tutu Atwell long, I think that's a big, no situation for us, especially with Jair Alexander guarding one of them automatically. I mean, he's a shutdown corner. He's one of the top corners in the league. So when I look at it, I think the most production I think that could come out of the wide receiver side of the Rams, I think Skronik gets a really big bump, right? He runs 40% of the time out of the slot. and he's not small, like he's 6'2". So, he has a little bit of a size advantage as well, going up in the slot. So I think, if you want a pass catcher, the one I would look at the most, or the one that intrigues me the most, especially his price point, is Skowronek. And, right now, from the looks of it, we're looking at what, 25% ownership. That's, you have an advantage on 3/4 of the field. So I think when it comes from the Packers side, any one of them are in play. I don't mind them whatsoever. We know kind of what that looks like. On the other side, I think we just have to be aware of kind of what this Packers defense is capable of, and really maybe the trouble situation that Mayfield is in tonight. So I think Skowronek gets the highest bump for me, and maybe I limit myself from Tutu Atwell, who is projected to be the highest owned wide receiver on the Rams side because of his price point.
We'll stick with you and talk about tight ends here. Not a whole lot to be excited about. Tyler Higbee is 6,400. Bryson Hopkins, the tight end 2 there, is 200. Neither one of them really getting a lot of work or a lot of targets. Although, in theory, if you think that dump offs are the way that the Rams are going to have to go here, then it maybe makes Higbee mildly interesting. Although that seems like an ugly price point for his production of late. And then Robert Tonyan seems to be the forgotten man here on the Packers, with all of this production going to Christian Watson with Jones and A.J. Dillon. And then you've got Ozzie DeGuara, who's going to be back. He sometimes gets in the mix, $200. Mercedes Lewis, not as active. He's also $200. Any love for any of these tight ends?
Yeah, I mean, Tanyan's going to run, what, 50% of the plays, as far as, him being on the field, how many routes he runs. And it's just, there's so many other guys that get the ball before him. You have so many more options. So he's not the top 3 or even 4th option, in my opinion, in this offense. And on the other side, like what are we paying for Higbee, right? Like, these short 1 or 2 yard catches. And, he's just been kind of obsolete, the last 3 weeks. And then even prior to that, since Stafford has really been out of this offense, like he's just kind of like shut down. Like once the injuries started taking place, just the field being open for him, and the schemes for him and his routes, it's just non-existent. So like, am I going to really pay that price point tonight for him to get 3 or 4 fantasy points? No, I'd rather bump myself down to Skowronek at 5,200. And they're about to be owned the same. So I just think like Skowronek still, as far as a pass catching opportunities, kind of outweighs him. But I don't know if like I'm on as high on tight ends. Like I just don't see them being in optimal lineups compared to the other pass catchers. I think I'd rather go to like a Dobbs or even a Cobb at that point before I go to them. So it's just very interesting. Like you would think, especially from the Rams side, that Mayfield would kind of look towards the most experienced guy in the offense, a guy who has definitely shown us production early on in the season. And typically what happens, especially in a backup role, or you come in and you take over, you go to that security blanket at the tight end position. And like, I didn't really see that last game against the Raiders. And that was kind of like a spot that was good for him. So for me, I don't know, maybe I'm just like not as high on the tight ends tonight. I'm curious to hear what Hoop thinks, but they just don't kind of fit the bill for me, maybe as other pieces that I know production will be there, and I know that there's upside, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to me, it's actually a little surprising that Higbee hasn't been shut down. One of the only mainstays that's still getting out there every game. We are roughly getting to 600 people watching, not yet at the 50% or even the 60% ratio in terms of likes. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, visit us at runpuresports.com. Hoop, the same feeling here, right? These tight ends, none of them have really been involved. The prices are up, at least for the 2 guys that you, at least in the past, have expected to be involved in, Tonyan and Higbee. Just tough prices to pay here. And seems like there's just not enough meat on the bone for some of the other options here, the backup tight ends, the blocking tight ends. You interested in any of these guys?
Yeah, Frank Gasaway says Hoop looks like he wants to puke talking about tight ends. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's just not great. And, it's kind of weird because, tight ends and Showdown, they've kind of had this romance going over the last couple seasons, but this is where it's going to stop. I agree with all the points you guys made. With Tonyan, the Packers wide receivers and pass catchers are now at like full strength, and he is just not a priority in this offense. Like his looks come third, fourth, fifth. I mean, on most plays. So I just can't get to Tanyan. You look at the recent production from Tanyan, and this is with guys out as well. Like, he has not cracked double digits since week 6. You need double digits. I mean, he's average. I mean, you look at some of these numbers: 6.2, 8.5, 5.9, 1.8, 3, 5, 2. He's doing nothing. So I just can't do it. I mean, might have some in my 150, but not a priority play. And then a guy like Higbee, I think really suffers with Baker. I mean, you look what happened with Baker and Christian McCaffrey, like the dump offs and the short little intermediate passes. That's not part of Baker's game. He's always looking for the big play. And unfortunately for him, he sucks and he can't make those big plays. And that's why all the teams he's been on have been terrible. But Higbee needs those short little intermediate passes, and they're just not there with Baker. Again, I'll put, just because I need options, like I need guys, I'll put a fair number in there on him. If he hits, he hits, but I'm definitely not forcing in any of the tight ends. I don't want the 200 DeGuara guy either. So yeah, tight end, which is weird because we've always kind of prioritized tight ends on these showdown slates. It's tough to make a case for these guys tonight. It really is.
Is there any argument here that coaching matters, and where Baker was in Cleveland, the debacle in Carolina between Matt Rule and then Wilkes really knowing very little about offensive football strategies. He's much more a defensive guy, that maybe he's had a couple of weeks to be coached up. Perhaps they're trying to get him right for next season and maybe trying to get him to look to dump off more. Or you just think that Baker is what Baker is at this point, and he's more apt to go ahead and run or make a bad decision than try and get it to an open guy 5 yards away?
Number 2 for sure, and there's no argument. Like, that's just, he's done that everywhere he's gone. I mean, how can you mess up having Christian McCaffrey as your running back? I mean, for a quarterback, he's got to be like the quarterback's best friend in any offense that he's ever played. I mean, he can bail you out in a heartbeat. Easy passes, easy production. He can take them to the house. He's just a quarterback's best friend. Like, how do you mess that up? Well, Baker Mayfield found a way to do that. So he just doesn't like those short intermediate things. He wants the home run play, and it's never there. It's why he takes the sacks or ends up trying to run with it. And it's just a disaster with Baker. And plus the other thing too, yeah, they've shut down all their other main pieces, and he's still out there rolling. Maybe the backup starts getting more work. I mean, maybe that's something to consider in tournaments. I don't know, but still, even if the backup's in there, Baker's not looking to his ass either. So it's just not a good situation.
Yeah, Baker, a home run hitter in a singles hitter's body. So it's a tough
yeah,
for sure. Hoop, I'll stick with you. We're going to get to kickers. We're going to get to defense. I think that's going to be an interesting conversation because it looks like our guy C-Dome is interested in one of the more expensive defenses that we've seen here in Showdown. But before we get there, you started off talking about potential captains. When I looked at this, I thought it's A.J. Dillon, it's Watson, it's Lazard, potentially it's Aaron Jones. If you're not uncomfortable about this thing going on with the ankle, by the way, someone trying to say in chat that it was a shin. All the reporting I'm seeing is it's an ankle injury that limited him in practice. Yes, no designation coming in, but you look at the last 2 weeks and it's clearly been A.J. Dillon that's gotten the bulk of not just the work, but the productivity. Are you looking at anyone other than that? And is there any scenario that you can consider playing a Rams captain in this spot?
I think I'm going to be all in on the Packers captains tonight. It's tough for me to make a case for a Rams guy. Definitely not playing Baker. I'm not playing Akers there. So it would have to be one of the wide receivers. And I don't think I can do it. If you're going to play any Rams captain, I guess for me it'd be Skronik, because I do think Tutu Atwell gets some ownership up there. Think Skronik would be my guy, but I'm honestly not doing it. It's going to be all Packers up there. In terms of the defenses and the kickers, Packers defense appears to be in a real good spot. They're up there a little bit at 5K, but I mean, they could potentially, put up a big boy score here. I won't play them in captain, but I will have exposure in flex. And then the kickers, I don't know, not as excited. You know me, I love my kickers, but tonight, I always kind of go through the game log and see Crosby's only been at 10 or better twice this season, and it's been right on the number at 10. So some flex interest for him, but not playing him in the captain. And then, Matt Gay, same thing. I'll include him in the flex, but definitely not a captain kicker night for me tonight.
Brandon, interest in the captain, where are you looking at? I think you talked a little bit as well about these Packers receivers, obviously Jones, Dillon, and same question to you. Any scenario that you could see using a captain from the Rams for this game?
Yeah, I think Hoop makes a good point. Like if there's any Ram that you're considering for captain, it's probably Skowronek, because I am the highest on him in regards to the pass catchers. And I think he just has the most promising kind of script given the type of defense that Green Bay runs. And I talked about that earlier with the blitzing and the press coverage, and just the outside is relatively difficult given the talent of corners. So I don't mind that. And I think if they're also down a lot, let's just say the running game does get going for Green Bay, and Mayfield's in one of those, like, I have to throw a ton type of situation, it kind of suits him even more. And then the other side, I think it just has to be considered just because of how bad the rushing defense is. And I'll stick to it, is the Cam Akers. Like, it's probably not the greatest take in the world, just given like how much upside does he really have, but it's just such a bad rushing defense, man. Like if McVay goes in here and just thinks that they can throw all over them, I just don't think that's the case. I think you have to run, right? So Cam Akers, and I want to say this as well. Cam Akers is probably gonna be my other guy, but there's one guy I do want people to just really kind of consider, or even give the idea of. He's $800, Malcolm Brown. I know this sounds probably egregious, right? But he's not going to be owned. He did play 28% of the snaps last week. He did get officially signed to the active roster. And he just, I will say this, there's been in games a little bit earlier this year, 5 carries, 7 carries. He did get 2 targets last week as well. Like, who's to say he doesn't get a goal line carry? Like, there's nothing out there that says that he doesn't. He's a bigger back than Akers. He weighs more than him. So, let's just say they do get down to the goal line and they say, you know what, Malcolm Brown, he's on the field. That could be a slate breaker, right? So, and this is one thing, once again, I'm attacking the running back spot. So just wanted to throw that out there. It's not the most egregious thing. You're paying $800 for a guy that's going to play 30% of the snaps. The production, yeah, it hasn't really been there, but there is potential. So, it's like that Barry Snell situation weeks ago. Don't rule that out. This is where you got to attack them. And if they say F the passing game, we're just going to run all game. Well, then that means that these guys are going to get tired ahead of him. He's going to get some opportunities. So I do like the Malcolm Brown call. That's even more interesting as I talk about it even more. And then for the kickers, just one thing to keep, an eye on. I know Hoop kind of pointed out the volume really isn't there, and their scores haven't been there. But the Rams, they do give up the 3rd or 4th most field goal attempts per game in the NFL. And surprisingly enough, they give up the most field goal attempts on the road this season. So, 4,200, I'd rather take him over, let's say, a Higbee, let's say, a Tanyan. All these guys are kind of in the same ballpark, and you get a price discount. So I think Crosby is definitely in play for me, given kind of, if we think also too that this offense, kind of has its way with this kind of depleted Rams defense, and they turn over the ball too. I mean, there's going to be some opportunity there for Crosby. So I don't mind that whatsoever.
How often, or how many opportunities, the question I think is, how many opportunities do you think the Rams are going to get at or near the goal line?
That's the thing. Maybe one, it's for sure. It's 2 possibility. The thing is I don't know how much this offense can move the field, but there are the anomalies of, let's just say they run the ball to the 40-yard line and then they only have to move 30 something yards to the goal line. Or then, Aaron Rodgers does turn it over. There's a fumble and they have it there. I'm just saying that if there is that opportunity and they do have that goal line situation, who's to say that Malcolm Brown doesn't get potentially kind of a situation where he does get the ball? Or let's just say Akers gets hurt or he fumbles. That's definitely possible. The fumbling, we've seen it before. He fumbles, he's out of the game. And what happens? Well, now you got two guys. You got Williams and Malcolm Brown. So Malcolm Brown's, more familiar with this offense. You just never know. So I think I just have to put it in consideration because I just don't know how much Baker could excel tonight in Green Bay, depleted team. The offense doesn't have the best of talent. The better talent's on the defensive side of the ball for Green Bay. So I think I just have to kind of look at that. And, I'm trying to win 500K. So if Malcolm Brown wins me 500K, then beautiful. If not, hey, whatever. I took the chance.
Fair enough. Hoop. No interest in the captain. Kicker. Any interest in kickers in flex and any interest in either of these defenses?
Yeah, so kickers, both of them in play in the flex for me, certainly. I mean, just because I'm not liking a lot of these cheap-ish options on this slate. The upside for these kickers, I do like that little nugget, though, about the Rams, giving up the most field goals. That is a little bit encouraging, but man, like Crosby he's only cracked or hit 10 twice this season, right on the number, and that's it. But again, 10 could be good enough in the flex on the slate. So fine with Crosby. Matt Gay actually has some solid games as well. I do think the Rams obviously struggle to move the ball. But again, if they do get it into the red zone, they probably struggle to score too, which is nice for a kicker. So I'm good with both these kickers in the flex. Defense wise, not going to play the Rams. I mean, 3.4K, no interest in them. The Packers, probably not a captain play. I rarely do defenses in captain. I mean, I just feel like you're either a defense guy or you're not. I'm definitely go with them in the flex just because I don't think there's a lot of, options in terms of who can get 10, 12, 11 fantasy points. I think they realistically can. So I'll have them in the flex, probably not in the captain though.
So, we know where you stand on the kickers. Seems to me like you like this Green Bay defense, priced a little bit up at 5K. What do you think we see from them tonight? And then one bold call for this game.
Yeah, I think the Packers D is definitely, in consideration. Mayfield played here last season, if I'm not mistaken. I think around this time, Christmas. I don't know if you guys remember, but he threw 4 picks that game. And so, for me, Lambeau is a very difficult place to play, especially in the winter. This is a must-win for Green Bay, right? They win this, they're 1 game behind Detroit. Seattle's got to play the Chiefs in Kansas City this upcoming week. Green Bay's got to play Detroit at the end of the season. So there is this silver lining type game script where if Green Bay wins and then they win the remaining 2 or 3 games and they play Detroit at the end of the season, in Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken, this could be a situation where they could still sneak in the playoffs. So there's a lot riding on Green Bay for this game. There's nothing for the Rams side, right? So, for me, it just states the case more like Hoop was mentioning earlier, Packers heavy. I like the Packers D. I talked about it before, right? This Green Bay defense with the air yards, they're giving up more short passes than they are long passes. They blitz the second most in the league, right? They run a lot of press. They get to the quarterback. So this is going to make Baker even more uncomfortable, right? And what we know is when Baker gets uncomfortable, he does weird things. He turns over the ball. So I think you have to just consider the Packers, given all of that riding for them, looking at that defense. I don't mind. And then I think my bold call is gonna listen. I don't know why, man, but something's telling me is Malcolm Brown at 800. I think you can only really stay in this game tonight if you run, and you got to run heavy. And Malcolm Brown is bigger than Akers. He played 30% of the snaps. He's $800. I don't mind him in the flex. You have to run the ball to give yourself a chance. And they're so weak. If you look at all the games this season, they've been run all over. This Packers team cannot stop the run. I would be baffled if you go into this game tonight and McVay's yeah, we're just gonna throw and we're gonna throw all over them. No, you're not. I just don't see that happening. So I like Malcolm Brown, 800. Yes, he's 3rd on the depth chart, but he only played 1 less snap than Kyren Williams. And like I said, he's a bigger back. He's 225, 230 pounds. He's a bruiser. So put the bruiser in. If you do get a shot at the goal line, give it to Malcolm Brown. And I think that makes the difference tonight. I think that is realistic into some capacity when looking at a slate and you're trying to win 500K.
I'm going to side with the expectation that we're going to see some logical coaching out of Sean McVay.
I know. I feel like this is such an egregious take, but whatever.
What was his snap rate? You said 30% he played?
So last week, I looked at kind of where he was at. He played 18 snaps. Kieran played 19. He played 28%, right? And then previously before that, when he was, on the active roster, 28%, 25%. So he's there, right? Like there's some form of play calling for him to be on the field. And like I mentioned before, looking at his size advantage over Akers and also looking at other backs of his size this season, it bodes well. So I'm just thinking, like, especially if they're down more too, like, who's to say that he just doesn't get that garbage time? And typically sometimes that garbage time can win you this type of slate. So I don't know why, but like, I just have this weird inkling and I feel like this shit usually pans out. So I just have to stick with it, but he's 800. It's not egregious. Like, of the low price guys, I think he bodes the best considering the amount of snaps that he'll get. I look at it from a snap to price perspective and it just kind of matches up. And go look at all these games this season of the defense of Green Bay. Like, they have gotten destroyed on the ground. So, and the logical coaching, it's funny, JT, if that doesn't happen, then like, F me, right? Like, whatever. But I would be shocked if you're like, you don't go in thinking, listen, let's just run this ball down their throats, like, and see what happens. But if not, then it is what it is.
Real quick, because I want to get to Hoop for one last thing, and then we got to get out of here. But if you're playing Malcolm Brown, are you playing him and Akers, or are you just playing him?
I think I would, maybe play both of them if I think like they stick in the game and they just want to run. And then I think on the other side too, the other side of the contrary, I don't mind him in the flex. Like, if you like run him and Skronik, like a 4-2, I think that's interesting. Or him and Mayfield, or, like if you're running a 3-3, him, Mayfield and Skronik, like things like that. I think you just got to get different. But automatically, I mean, he's 2% projected ownership. No one's playing him. Like, no one. So you already have a huge edge. So no matter what your roster construction is, it's going to be unique and different. I just think it's super interesting that a guy who got, 18 snaps, 30% of the playing time is 800, but yet no one's really focusing on that. And it's like the weakest aspect of the defense. So hopefully the ship's night, because then I'll tell you what, Run Pure is going to be all over that freaking leaderboard. And we're going to be like, damn, this was legit.
Dulcich, is it Dulcich 2.0 here?
Yeah, it kind of, I don't know, man. Like, it's weird. I'm going to hammer Malcolm Brown just because of like this whole analysis and talk that we've had. So we'll see what happens. It's
Greg Dulcich 2.0. And Hoop, listen, no matter how bad Baker is or how uncomfortable he gets, whatever things he does tonight, nothing is going to be worse than that clip of Jacoby Myers throwing the 30-yard backwards pass as time is expiring in a tie game. Yeah. Just he can't do worse than that, right?
Man, wow, that was tough to see. But you know what? I give him credit. He took full. I mean, a lot of times these athletes have bullshit responses when they're questioned about it. He took full responsibility for probably one of the biggest fuck ups of all time. I mean, that is just like, you could have a 7th grade football player out there and they would know better than to do that. That was wild.
That is an all-time clip for sure.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, you got to do it. Give us your bold call for this game, and everyone watching, hit the like button as we wrap up.
Bold call is going to be Allen Lazard. I think Lazard has a huge night tonight. Love Watson too, but I think we could see Allen Lazard explosion tonight.
Pass catcher in the captain for the Packers with another pass catcher and Aaron Rodgers in flex. And it's probably going to be what you see in the Hoops core, right?
Potentially so. You have to be a member at runpuresports.com to check it out, right?
That's right. Use code HOHOHO25. Get 25% off your first month's membership at runpuresports.com. And if you're a member, or if you go ahead and sign up and give yourself that early Christmas gift or that not early, very timely Hanukkah gift, then you can get in there. You can get Big T's player pool, the cores from all the guys. JSU is likely to have a player pool up as well. That's it for us. We got to get out of here. Thank you for watching us. We hope you're having a great start to this holiday week for Hoop, for Sea Dome, and Simon behind the scenes. Simon, please get us out of here.